Do you remember what it felt like to be a teenager in love back in 1960? Before texting, before swiping, before love became a string of notifications? Back when everything about falling in love felt slower, quieter, but somehow bigger, like your whole world could shrink down to a single phone call, a letter folded just right, or a look across a crowded high school gym. If you lived it, you know it wasn't just romance. It was ritual. Every step of falling in love had a rhythm. You felt it in your heartbeat when you reached for the rotary phone. You heard it in the crackle of your favorite song on the radio. You smelled it in her perfume, something soft, powdery, maybe white shoulders or evening in Paris. You saw it in the chrome of his car, polished for Saturday night. This wasn't about convenience. It was about commitment. Every small gesture carried weight. Let's go back to when love wasn't instant. It was earned. You remember the phone, that clunky, heavy rotary phone mounted on the kitchen wall. The cord always twisted, your mother in the next room pretending not to listen. When you liked someone, calling them wasn't casual. You didn't just pick up and dial. You practiced what you'd say. You rehearsed your tone, your timing, your courage. And when you finally did it, when their voice came through, it felt electric. You could hear the faint hum of the line, the static of distance, the heartbeat of your own nerves. You didn't have the safety of emojis or screens. Every pause meant something. Every laugh could stay in your head for days. Today, you can text someone without thinking, delete a message before it's read, block, ghost, move on. But back then, you had to face the silence. You had to mean what you said. Tell me, when was the last time a phone call made your hands tremble? And then there were the love letters, real, tangible proof of affection. You'd fold a paper carefully, maybe spray it with a bit of perfume, maybe sign it with a heart. The pen would glide across the paper slower than your thoughts. You had to choose every word deliberately. Ink didn't have a backspace key. Writing a love letter meant sitting still, thinking deeply about what you truly felt. When you sealed the envelope, you sealed a part of yourself in it. You'd walk it down to the mailbox, heart pounding as the metal flap closed. And then came the waiting, the long, aching wait. That waiting was part of the sweetness. You'd check the mailbox every day, pretending not to. The moment you saw your name written in their handwriting, your stomach flipped. The envelope was warm from the sun. You'd sit somewhere private, your bed, your porch, and open it like it was sacred. You'd read every line slowly, then again, then again. That paper would end up creased and worn, carried around in your pocket until the words became part of you. Now love letters have been replaced by digital words that disappear as quickly as they arrive. No handwriting to trace, no scent to hold on to, just pixels that vanish with a swipe. Doesn't it feel like something's been lost? And oh, the dances. The high school gym, strung with streamers and cheap balloons. The floor smelled faintly of wax and cologne, a mix of sweat and sweet anticipation. Boys lined one side, girls the other, pretending not to look, but stealing glances all night. The DJ, or maybe the principal's son with a record player, would spin slow songs. Only You by the Platters, Earth Angel, Unchained Melody. You'd stand there, heart racing, rehearsing in your head. Should I ask her? When you finally did, when your hand found hers, the world seemed to quiet. You'd sway together, barely moving, your cheek brushing hers, the air thick with the scent of Brill cream and perfume. You didn't need to say much. The closeness said everything. Compare that to now. Crowded clubs, flashing lights, songs too loud for words, people dancing for cameras instead of each other. Back then, a single slow dance could make your whole week. Do you remember that fluttering feeling when just one song could convince you it was love? And of course, the cars. In 1960, the car wasn't just transportation. It was your stage, your escape, your private world. Maybe you had a Chevy Impala, a Ford Galaxy, or if you were lucky, a red convertible that made you feel invincible. Gas was cheap, roads were open, and a Saturday night drive with your sweetheart meant everything. You'd pull into the local drive-in. Windows rolled halfway down, radio tuned to the soft hum of doo-wop harmonies. The glow from the movie screen reflected off the chrome trim, her hand resting just close enough to yours on the bench seat. You remember the warmth of that hand, the scent of buttered popcorn, the sound of rain starting to tap against the windshield during the second feature. There was no GPS, no dashboard screens, just stars, headlights, and the hum of the engine. Today, cars have Bluetooth and navigation, but they've lost that soul. You can't program the feeling of sitting under the stars with someone you think might be the one. Do you remember your first drive like that? Then there were the rules, the unspoken ones. Back then, dating wasn't casual. You didn't just hang out, you went steady. That meant something. Maybe it was a class ring you wore around your neck, wrapped in tape so it would fit, or his Letterman jacket draped over your shoulders, smelling faintly of Old Spice and gasoline. Those symbols weren't just for show. They were declarations. When you wore them, you were part of something, a quiet promise between two people trying to make sense of the world. Today, official doesn't mean what it used to. Labels come and go. People call it situationships, soft launches, gray areas. But in 1960, when someone asked you to go steady, it wasn't vague. It was a commitment, a decision. Do you remember that nervous pride? The way your friends teased you, but deep down you couldn't stop smiling? Even your body knew it was love. The quickened pulse when you saw them in the hallway. The way your skin tingled when their fingers brushed yours. The weight in your chest when you said goodnight. Science calls it adrenaline, dopamine, oxytocin. But back then, you didn't need a name for it. You just called it falling. And when you were in love, music became your language. Every couple had their song. Maybe it was Elvis singing Can't Help Falling in Love. Maybe it was the Everly Brothers, or Connie Francis, or a local band on a scratchy 45. You'd sit by the record player, arm propped on the turntable, waiting for that first crackle. That song could stop time. You'd dance alone in your room, pretending they were there, memorizing every lyric like it was written just for you. Now, playlists change every week. Songs get skipped halfway through. Back then, music wasn't background noise. It was the heartbeat of your love story. Tell me, what song still brings you back? But maybe the most powerful part of being in love in 1960 wasn't the dates or the dances or the letters. It was the uncertainty. You didn't know if they'd call. You didn't know if you'd see them again after graduation, or if life would pull you in opposite directions. And that uncertainty made every moment matter more. You didn't scroll through photos to see where they were. You didn't have constant access. You just had faith. And somehow, that made the connection stronger. That's what made teenage love back then unforgettable. It wasn't just romance. It was courage. The courage to feel deeply, to wait, to hope. Do you remember how love had to fit within the rules of your parents' house? Back then, privacy wasn't something you demanded. It was something you earned, if you ever got it at all. The world was smaller, closer. You lived under one roof, sometimes with siblings who teased you endlessly, parents who believed in curfews, and neighbors who noticed everything. If a boy came to pick you up, he didn't honk from the curb. He walked up to the door, rang the bell, and shook your father's hand. His palms were always just a little sweaty from nerves, and your mother would linger nearby, pretending to straighten the tablecloth while she quietly judged whether he was a nice young man. That ritual mattered. It meant respect, accountability. You didn't just disappear with someone, you earned trust, and that made every date feel sacred. The pressure was real, but so was the excitement. You remember standing in front of the mirror, smoothing your dress or fixing your hair, listening for the knock at the door. Your stomach fluttered like a trapped bird. You didn't need a fancy restaurant or a grand gesture, just the thought that someone cared enough to show up and ask for you. Compare that to now, when relationships often begin behind screens and end in silence. There was no scene notification in 1960, no algorithms telling you who to like. You had to put yourself out there, face to face, voice to voice. Doesn't that kind of bravery feel almost impossible now? Then there was the drive-in diner, the place where every love story found its rhythm. Picture it. Neon lights flickering in soft pinks and blues, chrome stools, jukeboxes glowing in the corners, and waitresses on roller skates sliding over with milkshakes and fries. You and your date sat in the booth, sharing one straw between two tall glasses. Your knees brushed under the table. Every touch felt electric because it wasn't casual. It was earned. There was something ritualistic about splitting a milkshake. The cold sweetness, the whipped cream melting into the cherry, the hum of conversation around you, all of it became a memory etched in sound and taste. The air always smelled like French fries and vinyl seats. Your laughter mixed with the crackle of a jukebox playing Put Your Head on My Shoulder. Now, love is lived out in cafes with Wi-Fi, each person scrolling between bites, half present, half elsewhere. But back then, you didn't have distractions. You looked at each other. You talked. You watched the way their eyes moved when they laughed. When was the last time you looked at someone and didn't glance down at a screen between sentences? Of course, part of being a teenager in love in 1960 was learning patience. You couldn't text when you got home. You couldn't call all night long. There was one phone in the house, and it was everyone's. If you were lucky, you got 10 minutes before your dad tapped his watch. That meant your goodbyes had to count. You'd whisper softly, hoping nobody overheard. Good night, good night. And then one of you would say, you hang up first, and neither of you ever wanted to. The click of the receiver was like a tiny heartbreak. The silence that followed was deafening. You'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the whole conversation, wondering if they felt the same way. That ache, that uncertainty. It wasn't comfortable, but it was real. It made every moment the next day, every glance, every shared smile feel like a reward. Today, we fill that silence instantly. A quick text, a heart emoji, a photo sent before bed. But back then, the waiting was part of the magic. Love stretched across time, and patience made it sweeter. Doesn't that kind of anticipation sound almost romantic now? And then there were the movies, the theaters with velvet curtains and flickering projectors, the smell of butter and cardboard popcorn boxes, the hush that fell when the lights dimmed. You'd sit together in the dark, pretending to watch the screen while your hands inched closer on the armrest, the warmth of their fingers brushing yours for the first time. That's a moment you don't forget. Maybe it was a Doris Day film, or maybe Psycho if you were daring. But the movie didn't matter much. It was the act of being there, close enough to feel their breath, to sense their heartbeat through the quiet. Your body remembered that closeness long after the credits rolled. Compare that to today's theaters, where everyone's phone glows blue and nobody's eyes stay still. In 1960, you couldn't rewind or stream. When something happened on screen, you experienced it together, in real time. It was shared. It was alive. Tell me, do you remember your first movie date? But love wasn't always smooth. Sometimes it meant heartbreak so sharp it stayed with you for decades. Maybe they moved away. Maybe their parents disapproved. Maybe it was just bad timing. The end of a teenage love in 1960 wasn't softened by distraction. You couldn't mute the ache by scrolling. You had to live through it. Each song on the radio reminding you of them. Each empty phone call you didn't make. Heartbreak back then had a physical texture. It sat in your chest like a weight. You'd go for long drives with the radio turned up, pretending you weren't listening for their favorite song. The wind through the open window didn't wash away the pain. It carried it. But over time, even that heartbreak became part of your story. It made you gentler, wiser. It taught you that love was meant to hurt a little, because anything real always did. Now, breakups happen through texts, often without closure. Pain becomes performative, shared in captions, not conversations. But in 1960, love and loss happened in private, in quiet. It taught you to sit with your feelings, to let them shape you. Isn't that something we've lost? The ability to just feel without broadcasting it? And let's not forget the friendships that grew around those loves. Your best friend was your confidant. You'd sit together after school, shoes kicked off, sharing every detail, every glance, every word, every smile. You'd analyze what he really meant when he said, "See you around." You'd pass notes in class with tiny hearts drawn in the margins. That was how love stories were shared, by whisper, by secret, by giggle. Today we have group chats and screenshots, but back then, the act of telling your friend about someone you liked felt like sharing treasure. Your heart's secret wasn't data, it was intimacy. Do you remember those long conversations that stretched late into the night when you tried to imagine your future with someone, half laughing, half serious? And maybe one evening, after all the dates and dances and letters, you'd stand outside under a porch light, saying goodbye. The night would hum with crickets. The air would feel cool against your skin. You'd look at each other for a long time, unsure if it was the right moment. Then it would happen, the first kiss. Soft, uncertain, but earth-shaking. You'd feel it all the way to your fingertips. That single moment carried more meaning than any 1,000 digital messages ever could. You'd go to bed that night still tasting the sweetness of it, still smiling into your pillow. Your heart felt too big for your chest. That's what being a teenager in love in 1960 was. It was discovery, risk, tenderness, and the endless belief that love could last forever. Do you remember the radio? Back when it wasn't just background noise, it was the soundtrack to your life. In 1960, you didn't just listen to songs, you waited for them. You'd lie on your bed, the small transistor radio pressed to your ear, waiting for the DJ to say those magic words. This next one goes out to Linda from Tom. He says he's sorry. And just like that, love was broadcast across the airwaves, immortalized in static and song. Dedications were sacred. You'd spend the whole afternoon dialing the station, hoping your call got through. The excitement of hearing your message read aloud. It was a rush no app notification could ever match. And if your sweetheart happened to be listening too, you felt connected across miles of invisible radio waves, both of you smiling in separate rooms, hearts synced by a melody. The radio wasn't just music, it was emotion, amplified. You remember the soft crackle, the warmth of the tubes heating up, the DJ's smooth voice gliding over the air like honey. Every song was a story, every lyric a possibility. When Elvis sang, "Are you lonesome tonight?" it wasn't background, it was a confession. Now we skip through playlists, shuffle through songs, everything's instant, endless, disposable. But back then, waiting for that one song, your song, felt like proof that love was real. Do you remember the first time you heard a song and thought, "That's us"? And when you weren't listening to the radio, you were dancing to it. At sock hops and basements, at house parties where the furniture was pushed aside and the records stacked high. Someone's older brother was always the DJ, flipping 45s on a turntable, the needle scratching slightly between songs. The air was thick with laughter, perfume, and the faint smell of wax from the polished floors. There was a code to those dances. Fast songs were for showing off, spinning, laughing. Slow songs were for everything unsaid. Your hands on their waist, their head against your shoulder. It was all there, in the music. Those dances weren't just fun. They were initiation rites into love. Every teenager in that dimly lit gym was learning the same unspoken language: how to be close, how to care, how to say "I like you" without words. Today's parties are louder, wilder, but somehow emptier. Back then, the simplicity of two people swaying in rhythm could feel infinite. You didn't need anything more than a record, a heartbeat, and courage. Do you remember how long a single slow song could feel? Like time itself paused for you. But love in 1960 wasn't all dances and sweetness. It came with expectations. Society had rules for everything. Girls were expected to be polite, demure. Boys were expected to be gentlemen. If a boy opened your car door, he wasn't showing off. He was proving he'd been raised right. Your reputation mattered. A single rumor could follow you all through high school, whispered at lockers and soda fountains. That pressure shaped how you loved. You had to navigate feelings within invisible boundaries. A kiss on the cheek could mean everything. A promise ring could feel like forever. You learned to speak in subtleties. Through glances, gestures, silence, you learned restraint, patience, respect. And yet, even within those rules, rebellion stirred. The 1960s were on the edge of change. Rock and roll was shaking the culture. Movies were getting bolder. And suddenly, love didn't have to fit inside a box. Teenagers started pushing back, staying out later, dancing closer, dreaming bigger. Love wasn't just about approval anymore. It was about freedom. You can almost feel that shift when you think back, can't you? How innocence and rebellion coexisted. You were still writing love letters, but you were also sneaking kisses behind drive-in screens, blasting Buddy Holly in the car, imagining a life where you got to decide who you loved and how. It was the dawn of modern love, still tender but brimming with defiance. Parents didn't understand it. To them, love had rules, steps, traditions. To you, it was a feeling that couldn't be contained. That tension between generations, between tradition and independence, gave 1960s teenage love its electricity. Every "I love you" felt like an act of bravery. Do you remember your first argument with someone you loved? How your chest tightened, your throat burned? You didn't have guides or online advice. You had to figure it out yourself. You'd replay every word later, wondering if you'd said too much or not enough. Maybe you wrote an apology letter, carefully folded, slipped into a locker or a desk. And when they forgave you, that hug, the reconciliation, felt like sunrise after a storm. Back then, you didn't talk about communication styles or boundaries. You just tried. You learned through trial and error. And maybe that made love messier, but also more human. There were also those fleeting summer romances, the kind that burned bright and fast. Maybe you met at a county fair, your hands brushing over cotton candy, the Ferris wheel glowing above you. You'd walk together, talking about nothing and everything, already knowing it couldn't last past August, but that didn't stop you. Summer love in 1960 was about living in the moment. Barefoot on the beach, laughter tangled with sea breeze, the taste of salt on your lips when you kissed goodbye. Decades later, you might not remember their last name, but you remember that night, the sound of the waves, the sand cooling under your feet, the way time slowed. That's what love was then. Moments so vivid they never fade, even when everything else does. Now, even summer love has schedules, text chains, story posts, countdowns to goodbye. But in 1960, it was pure and fleeting. That's what made it unforgettable. Tell me, do you still remember your summer love? And then, of course, there was going steady. The phrase itself sounds almost quaint now, doesn't it? But back then, it was everything. Going steady meant exclusivity, loyalty, and status. It wasn't something you said lightly. There was ceremony to it. A ring exchanged, a jacket loaned, sometimes even a promise carved into a tree. When a boy asked a girl to go steady, it meant he was choosing her. It meant she could stop wondering, stop guessing. That promise was tangible. His class ring would dangle from a chain around her neck, warm from her skin, the metal smelling faintly of cologne. That ring wasn't jewelry, it was belonging. If the relationship ended, the ritual reversed. Returning the ring was agony. You'd rehearse what to say, hands shaking as you gave it back. But even then, you did it face to face. That courage, the act of confronting heartbreak directly, was part of growing up. There was dignity in it, even in the pain. Today, we untag, unfollow, block, erase. But back then, endings didn't vanish. They lingered. And strangely, that lingering made you stronger. Do you remember your first heartbreak like that? The one that taught you what love really costs? By the end of the 1960s, love itself was changing. The decade that began with poodle skirts and soda fountains was ending with Woodstock and Revolution. But if you were a teenager in 1960, you stood right on the edge of that shift, half in the old world of curfews and formal dates, half in the new one of freedom and self-expression. You felt both the innocence and the rebellion inside. You, colliding like two radio stations on the same frequency. That's what made being in love then so unforgettable. It wasn't perfect, it was becoming. You were learning not just what love was, but who you were through it. And even now, all these years later, the memories haven't faded, have they? They live somewhere deep in the senses, buried in the smell of rain on hot pavement, the sound of a slow song drifting through a summer night, the way your heart still stirs when you see an old car cruising by with the top down and the radio playing something familiar. That's how love from that time worked. It became part of your nervous system, coded into your heartbeat. Because in 1960, love wasn't abstract, it was physical. It was the weight of a payphone receiver in your hand, the warmth of another person's shoulder against yours in a darkened theater, the faint burn of aftershave on your cheek after a kiss goodnight. Love was touch and texture, scent and sound. You felt it before you even knew how to describe it. There were certain smells that always meant love. The faint sweetness of Aquanet hairspray mixed with cigarette smoke outside a diner, the clean, soapy scent of your date's freshly pressed shirt, gasoline from the pump while he filled the tank before taking you to the drive-in, the sugar glaze of a shared donut, the salt of popcorn, the waxy sweetness of bubblegum when you kissed. Every memory had its own chemistry. And then there were the sounds, the ones that instantly brought you back. The hum of fluorescent lights in a school hallway, the squeak of saddle shoes on linoleum floors, the soft thump of records stacking on an automatic turntable, the slow build of a love song fading into static before the DJ's voice returned. These weren't just noises, they were cues, reminders that you were alive, that you were feeling everything for the first time. You didn't realize then that you were living through a kind of magic. You thought it was ordinary life, dates, dances, curfews, but it was the soundtrack to your becoming. Every look, every hesitation, every heartbreak was a lesson in who you were and what it meant to care for someone. And maybe that's the difference now. Love in 1960 was something you worked for. You had to show up physically, emotionally. There were no shortcuts. You couldn't send a text to fix a mistake or hide behind an emoji to soften your meaning. You had to call, knock, apologize. You had to risk embarrassment. Risk, rejection, risk your pride. But that risk is what made it real. Do you remember the way your chest would tighten before knocking on their door? Or how your palms would sweat before you said, "Would you like to go out sometime?" That feeling, that mix of fear and excitement is the pulse of real connection. And maybe that's what's missing today. The stakes, the courage it took to be vulnerable before the whole world got smaller and faster. Because love in 1960 wasn't a performance. It wasn't curated or filtered or shared for likes. It was private, messy, imperfect, and deeply sincere. You didn't fall in love to show people. You fell because you couldn't help it. And for so many, that first teenage love stayed with you long after. Even if you didn't marry them, even if you never saw them again, they became a quiet thread in your life. You'd hear their name once in a while and feel that flicker again. The warmth, the ache, the bittersweet memory of who you were when you loved them. They became a symbol of everything young love represented. Innocence, possibility, and the feeling that your heart could change the world. Sometimes late at night, when you hear an old song on the radio, something by Sam Cooke or Brenda Lee, you still feel it. The years fall away, and suddenly, you're there again. Sitting in a parked car, stars overhead, the dashboard lights glowing faintly green, the air thick with summer and silence, their hand in yours. The world small and infinite all at once. You can almost hear the creak of the bench seat, the faint hum of the radio, the whisper of a voice saying, "Don't let go." And for a moment, you're not older, you're not wiser, you're just that kid again, trembling with hope, believing that love could last forever. That's what being a teenager in love in 1960 was. It wasn't just about who you loved, it was about how you loved. With your whole being, with no script, no guidebook, no distractions, just the raw, beautiful collision of fear and tenderness, uncertainty and desire. It was about learning to wait, learning to listen, learning to give without expecting. It was about driving nowhere in particular, just to stay a little longer together. About watching the clock tick toward curfew, praying time would slow down. About the way goodbye always hurt a little, because you knew that even ordinary moments, standing under a porch light, saying goodnight, could feel like forever. Love today may look different. Maybe the heart hasn't changed as much as we think. Maybe we still crave that same electricity, that same quiet proof that we matter to someone. Maybe, deep down, we still long for the simplicity of love that wasn't performed or optimized, but felt. So, if you were a teenager in love in 1960, you know the truth. It wasn't just a decade, it was an emotion, a way of loving that belonged to a slower, braver world. A world where every kiss counted, every letter mattered, and every dance felt like the first step towards something sacred. And maybe now, all these years later, that's the lesson worth remembering. Not that times were better, but that love was present. That when you loved someone, you showed up with your whole heart. You waited, you risked, you hoped. So tell me, what do you remember most about falling in love back then? Was it the music, the dances, the waiting by the phone, the letters folded into envelopes that carried your whole heart across town? Share it, because somewhere, someone younger will hear your story and understand what real love once looked like before screens, before swipes, before the world got too fast to feel it. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.